Hello, my dears, my darlings. I want to go ahead and apologize because this is probably going to be the most awkward thing that you've ever watched. Like every other human on earth, the sound of my own recorded voice makes me want to die a little bit, so I really have a large respect for you all for sitting through this every stinking day. So we're going to go ahead and start with our cultural facts. Today we are going to be covering Nicaragua and Panama. So to start off, we're going to talk about Nicaragua. The capital city is Managua. The population is right at about 6 million people. It's obviously in Central America. The national sport is baseball, which is a little surprising. Most Latin American countries, the national sport is soccer. And Nicaragua is actually one of the biggest tourist destinations in Central America, not only because of its beautiful beaches, both from the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, or its picturesque mountain range, but because it is consistently one of the safest countries in Central America. So it has a very low crime rate compared to some of its neighbors like Honduras. And size-wise, Nicaragua is slightly larger than New York State. So now we have a map. See us, the United States. How nice. Then you go down south, and then right in between Honduras and Costa Rica, you find Nicaragua. And the majority of the larger cities are actually in the Pacific Ocean, which is kind of counterintuitive because many of the first cities in the Caribbean and in South America that were founded by conquistadors coming in from Europe directly into the Caribbean. One of the most impressive features about Nicaragua is Lake Nicaragua. They got really, really creative with that name. And I'm going to go back to the previous slide and show you how large this lake is. So if you look over here, that is Lake Managua. And then this is Lake Nicaragua. And you can see one of the volcanic islands pictured on the map. But besides that one, there are over 400 small volcanic islands. Because like most of Central America, Nicaragua has a very active set of volcanoes. This lake is home to a very unique range of species, and some of these fish species don't exist anywhere else in the world except Lake Nicaragua. And kind of a terrifying thing about Lake Nicaragua is that it is one of the only places in the world that you can find freshwater sharks. Count me out. Okay, up next. So one of the largest cities and one of the most popular cities in Nicaragua is called Granada. And this is probably the most popular tourist destination in Nicaragua. And it's the oldest city on the continental area of Latin America. So there are a few cities that are older in Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic, just because they were settled first. But it is the oldest city in the continental area of Latin America. Now, sadly, only 29% of Nicaraguan children finish the mandated 6 years of schooling. So if you think about it, it's quite obviously a very different standard for education in Nicaragua. So they have a mandated 6 years of schooling. Here in the United States, if you just think for a second, we have schools K through 12 that are mandated. So they only require students to go to about 6th grade. But a lot of these students, 71% of them, don't actually finish those 6 years. And then there are 3 different regions. So you have the Pacific and Atlantic lowlands. And these are going to be the coast and the coastal areas. And then right in the middle, you'll have the North Central highlands. So it'll peak up. And down here at these 2 pictures, you can look at the city of Granada. It's absolutely stunning. You've got the Pacific Ocean in the background and all these bright, vibrant colors. Makes it a very inviting place. Instagram worthy. And then Nicaragua is also home to the famous Dul volcano. And this is the only volcano in the world. Crazy, I know. That is fed by 2 different magma flows. So 2 different subterranean sources of magma, which is ridiculously rare. Another thing that you might find interesting, so there are 88 constellations found in the night sky. So when we are up here in Kentucky in the northern hemisphere, we only see a few of those, maybe about half. But if you go to the southern hemisphere, like where Chile, Argentina, like all of South America is, they have different constellations. They have different stars that are visible in the night sky. But where Nicaragua and a lot of Central America is located, out of those 88 total constellations, they see about 86 of them. And then they have a folk dance, a national dance called Palo de Mayo. Okay, so that was about 8 minutes on Nicaragua, which I think is plenty of time. So we are going to go ahead and move on to Panama. Okay. So Panama is a place that I find very, very interesting, mainly because I'm a total nerd and I think the Panama Canal is basically the coolest thing in the world. But anyway, you guys already knew that. So the capital of Panama is Panama City. And this isn't like the Panama City beach that everyone goes to for spring break. This is like the real deal Panama City. There are only about 4 million people in Panama. It's located in Central America, and it connects Colombia. I'm going to flip to the map real quick. So it connects Colombia to Costa Rica. You can see right there just how skinny it is. So they use the Balboa. That is their currency, named after the famous explorer / conquistador. They also use the US dollar pretty frequently. And this is a pretty neat fact. So because it is such a narrow country, only about 50 miles wide, like from here to Lexington, there are a few spots, a few locations where you can see the sunrise and set over 2 different oceans. So that's pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. And this should say you see the sunrise over the Atlantic because the sun rises in the east and then sets in the west. So it sets on the Pacific. But anyway, here's the map. Panama, skinny little guy right here. And then right here, Next to Panama City is the Panama Canal. And we'll talk about that later, and I'll make you watch a little video about it. It's pretty neat. So Panama City is the only capital city in the entire world that has a rainforest within its city limits. It has tens of thousands of different plant species and animal species. Just in orchids alone, there are 1,400 different varieties. Insane. Whenever you see old men go on vacation, they always wear what's called a Panama hat. Over here, you can see a picture of one. It's kind of like a fedora. But, plot twist, they're not from Panama. They're actually from Ecuador. And Senator John McCain, if you guys remember, he ran against President Obama on the Republican ticket. He was a very, very, very prominent senator. So he was actually born in Panama, around the canal, which at the time was a U.S. territory, but the U.S. actually sold that back to Panama. Anyway, I've waited long enough. The Panama Canal. So here we go. The Panama Canal was built by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in a 10-year time span. So it started in 1904 and ended in 1914. And if you think about that time, technologically speaking, it's amazing that they accomplished that, because these men were working in this tropical area. Tons of them got malaria. A lot of people died in the making of the Panama Canal. But they physically dug out that about 40 or 50 miles of land to build these different channels. So all the vessels that go through Panama Canal, they have to pay a toll. They have to pay like taxes, kind of. And the toll is based on the size of the ship that goes through, as well as the amount of cargo and the type of cargo that it has. So one of the most impressive tolls that's ever been paid was well over $250,000. And that was by the Norwegian Pearl cruise ship in 2010. Now, I am going to pull up a time-lapse video of the Panama Canal. I think it's ridiculously cool. Let's see how I get this to fit in there. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to speed it up. And you'll see the ships go into a very small area, and they move the water levels. They open the gates, let them through. You notice there's about a 10-foot difference, maybe even 20 feet from level to level. So it's an insane amount of engineering. Look at that little tiny guy on the front, just to give you some scale. And if you notice, if you look right here on the sides, you'll see almost like little train cars, and they're on these tracks. They help maneuver the ships through the little alleyways. So there will be like 3 or 4 more attached to the boat. But there you go. So that's one side. It takes about 8 hours for ships and different vessels to get from one ocean through the canal into the other ocean, even though it's just about 40 miles. Okay, well that's it for fun cultural facts today. We are going to get ready and do notes on the future tense. Ooh la la.